Hello and welcome to Project Zion Podcast. This is your host, Robin Linkhart, and today is another episode in our Holy Ground series where we discuss spirituality, spiritual practices, and how spirituality connects with faith in the everyday aspects of life in today's world. Today, our guest is Apostle Mareva Arnaud Tchong. Mareva was ordained as an apostle and member of the Council of 12 Apostles at the 2013 World Conference. She is assigned to the Pacific Asia Mission Field, which includes the Australia Mission Center, East Asia Mission Center, French Polynesia Mission Center, Pacific Islands Mission Center, and the Philippines Mission Center. Mareva has also served as financial officer and president of the French Polynesia Mission Center and was counselor to the president of the Quorum of High Priests. Mareva is a native of Tahiti, French Polynesia. Welcome, Mareva. We're so glad to have you with us today. Mareva, we would love to get to know a little bit more about you and your family and how you came to be a member of Community of Christ. So tell us just a little bit more about all of those things.
So my name is Mareva Arnaud Tchong. Excuse me. I was born in 1968 in Tahiti in a family of 7 children. But at my birth, I was adopted and recognized by a couple, George and Christian, who are my parents. They are members of the church. My father was a missionary and an employee of the local church. And by their example, by affiliation, through education, it was like a thread in a needle.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes, like a thread in a needle. Mm-hmm.
Yes, so that I was baptized at the age of 10. I am married to Munanui. We have 3 daughters, Hiriata, Mihiata, and Ariata. We don't have to remember all their names. 3 sons-in-law, and all the children are between 31 and 24 years old. And today we have 2 grandchildren, Ari Inhore and Mareva. And I live on the island of Tahiti, the capital island of French Polynesia. And I have been working for the church for 20 years now. And before working for the church, I worked in one of the most popular fashion and sex shops in Tahiti. What I can say, I like to garden, to read, to do activities on the water, especially boogie boards and surfing. And I speak 2 languages fluently. Tahitian is the first one, French, the second one. I learned English in college, and I'm doing the best I can. And I can understand a little bit of Spanish, which I also studied in college. I think that's enough.
You do very well, very well. In my recent trip to French Polynesia, I was asked to facilitate a class, and I, of course, taught that class in English because I do not speak French or Tahitian. And Mareva was my interpreter, and so she was just keeping up minute by minute, second by second with Tahitian and French, and we had a PowerPoint in French, and we got it done, but Mareva was the miracle worker. It was great. So you grew up in a family that was already members of Community of Christ. You were 10 years old when you got baptized. So the church, Community of Christ, has been part of your life for as long as you can remember. How would you describe your faith journey as you grew from childhood to young adult and to now? We know seasons of life can be different in our discipleship as we grow. So tell us a little bit about your journey.
Mm-hmm. So at the beginning, my faith was unconsciously, I think, shaped by my parents, my education at home and in church. As a child, I never asked myself questions. Never, never, never. Education in a Polynesian family made it obvious that on Sunday we go to church. No question, it's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was a child and a young person, going to church or being in church activities is part of my life. And I was in the choir, was in the sports club of the congregation, participating in a children or youth camp. It was natural, maybe like kind of required natural. I was in the mood, like all children at that time, an innocent faith. But that innocent faith developed naturally through the love of my parents, the joy you feel when you are surrounded of a big family. And we have to know that here in French Polynesia at that time, 99% of the population were Christian, completely embedded in a religious Christian faith all around, everywhere you go. It's like that. All was closed on Sunday in the past because everyone went, all the people were in church, different churches, but everyone were in a church, went to church. So my faith was, I think, naturally growing. In 98, I think, I started working as a volunteer at the Mission Center office. And being at the church office encouraged me to attend more deeply in classes and time to learn deeper about Jesus, about mission, about the church, because in the past, my faith led me in the choir. I was just singing and I was happy. It was enough for me. I was in the spot of the church. It was enough for me. But I did not really understood. I did not really understand what's happening. But during that time, in my youth and young adult time, I began to learn and I began to have a faith doubting about everything.
Mm-hmm.
I raised the opposite. I was raising a lot and maybe too much questions to myself first and to everyone. And that there was even a period when I got deeply involved in the knowledge of my culture. And the more I read about missionaries and their practices long, long, long time ago here, the more I became anti-everything, anti-colonization, anti-Christian. I was thinking a lot and seeking. Each time I looked for more, each time I was troubled, and each time my faith, strangely, in God grew up and is still growing and always growing. So I believe my journey of faith is not stop, does not stop here. And I hope, I know I will discover more about my faith journey.
As long as I've known you, Mareva, and I met you in the Community of Christ Seminary, which I started attending in 2003. So it was between 2003, 2007 that we first met. But as long as I've known you, you have been a living example of a disciple that continues to learn and grow and deepen your faith and your expression of ministry. It's an inspiration. Thank you for sharing all that with us. It sounds like you had quite an active childhood in the church, as you say. It was a natural extension of the context of your culture that was 99% Christian, and your family was faithful in their attendance, that you were engaged in a lot of different activities as a young person. And then, in your college and growing years, going deep and learning about not just our church, but learning about the history of French Polynesia and the early missionaries, and going through what many young people go through, kind of that idealism and being anti everything, as you say. um, but always seeking that intrinsic quality you have to just seek and search and connect with your growing faith. Wonderful. I'm sure many listeners can connect with your description of that. So you started volunteering at the Mission Center office in 1998. Before we go on to learn more about your history with spiritual practices, can you tell us a little bit about kind of the timeline of your engagement as far as leadership? So 1998, you were volunteering in the Mission Center. Did you hold priesthood at that time?
No, no. So it's I don't know what happened. I'm still I don't well whatever. I don't know what happened at that time. I was volunteer as a receptionist.
Okay.
Answering at the phone call, like at the temple.
Yes. Yes.
Like thing. When I came back from a world conference with a group of young adults of my congregation, and I was completely transformed. I heard a testimony from an African brother, and my husband today. We were not married at that time even, and we were questioning about our life. It was a nice life, really nice life, and we heard this brother from Africa sharing his life, and we said, my God, we were completely outside of what God is asking us to do. And so I came back. I volunteered with the permission of Munani to work. It was normally 2 times per week, and I stayed all week. And after the mission center president, few months later, asked me if I can assist in the bishopric here. And it was counting the little coins. When the pastor come with the money, I was counting the little coins. And after doing copies, and I was employed at that time. And after that, Arthur Smith was assigned here as a theologian for education, and I assisted him. He needed an assistant at the temple school. And when he left Tahiti, French Polynesia, I replaced him, and I became counselor for the MCP at that time. And I became the MCP and the financial officer later.
And when were you first ordained to priesthood?
I was ordained as an elder. I can't remember the date, but I remember the time when my pastor came to me and said, I was working at the mission center and married after that, and he said, Mareva, after many nice words, you are called to the priesthood. And I was shocked.
Uh-huh.
The first thing I said is, you know that I'm dancing because
Mm-hmm.
I was dancing in the traditional Tahitian group, traditional,
Mm-hmm.
and at that time it was not allowed. Sorry, not allowed. It was the beginning of opening dance in the church,
Mm-hmm.
but not really accepted by all. And
Mm-hmm.
he said, "Oh," and so I accepted to be ordained as an elder. Voilà. And after I was ordained as a high priest.
High priest,
Right.
you became mission center president
Before becoming
before.
mission.
Right. All right. And now you serve in the office of apostle. Did you ever serve in the office of bishop, or it was high priest?
No,
Okay.
not priest. Oui.
Okay. Great. Inquiring minds want to know. We always ask all kinds of questions. Okay. Now we're ready to dive into our topic of spiritual formation and practices. In your time as a follower of Jesus Christ, and you look back on that time, how did you first learn about or discover spiritual practices?
I discovered spiritual practices without knowing that it was a spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Here, when we have worship in the church, especially when you go on islands, other islands than Tahiti, because the church is everywhere on islands, especially when you go on these islands, they have a kind of organizing worship. There's always something different. Let me show you an example. I remember one day I was in a camp with youth, long time ago, and we were walking at 4:30 in the morning
Ooh.
in the village with the pyjama and our blanket. It was
Mm-hmm.
cold, and we were walking maybe for 20 minutes to go at the end of the island and to worship in front of the rising sun.
Ah, the rising sun. Mm.
Rising sun. And for us, it was not normal, but it was a way to worship. We never thought that it was a spiritual practice then. And last year, we heard more and more about this spiritual practice. And today I am more intentional and I'm learning ways to do, even though I'm still keeping the one I used to do in the past.
Yeah, it's having visited French Polynesia a couple times. It felt to me that the culture of the people incorporates spirituality in a way that is just naturally a deeper connection with
Mm.
spirit and the integration of spirit and physical naturally occurring. So, are there other ways that your culture and context have impacted your understanding of spirituality as you've experienced the church really raising our awareness and teaching us things?
Um, the church in the Polynesian culture in the past was covered by colonization culture uh, and enveloped by other traditions. And so, being young, my spirituality was more influenced by what the church culture taught me. But over time, it has developed and enriched through a growing understanding of the gospel, of course,
Mm-hmm.
the church, but also today we are more and more claiming our Polynesian culture. Today, something behavioral and contextual who impact my life, my understanding of spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
that I see spirituality in a tattoo, for example.
You see spirituality in tattoos?
In a traditional tattoo, I
Uh-huh.
can see, I can, if I understand the symbols on that person, I, I think that that can be spiritual for me too. I
Yes,
see
yes.
spirituality in the ocean, in the traditional dance. We need to understand that in the past, there was a time where we were not allowed to speak the Tahitian at school.
Oh, okay. At the school or at
Yeah,
church?
at school.
At school.
At, but the church continued to keep the Tahitian language and French language. But at school it
Okay.
was French. So it's like that's why I said that the Polynesian culture was covered by other traditions.
Mm-hmm.
In the church, long, long time ago, not in our church only, in the Christian church, we were not allowed to have a flower on the ear.
Ah.
And so we had to adapt with what and
Mm-hmm.
who we were.
Mm-hmm.
And with this new understanding of, especially in the community, of course, that's great. We are a people with, we are a people worthy. That's the way you
Worthy.
say.
Worthy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we can see God in all colors, in all culture, and that makes a huge change in my understanding of spirituality.
Oh, wow, for sure. As I'm listening to you, Mareva, I'm understanding that being colonized by the French and then, in a way, also colonized by missionaries, or at least an overlay of Christianity of the day, was just pushing down the Polynesian culture. And as life in Community of Christ has evolved, we know that we have grown and deepened in our understanding as a global church, that
Yes.
God is calling us to embrace all cultures and to liberate people to express the gospel in their own language and rich culture of the people where they originated, and that has actually been a big plus in your understanding of spirituality. Did I get that right?
Yes. Yes. I'm speaking only for myself,
Yes, yes.
and because that's the way I lived from my childhood till then, and with the steps of really not understand at all the Polynesian culture.
Mm-hmm.
I am a Polynesian. Um, I understood, I understand the language. I understood the language, but not really going like were not really in the church. Legends of Polynesian legends and church was not really side by side in the past.
Uh-huh.
It's
Uh-huh.
something. Tattoo was out of the church. Dance was out of the church. Too much flowers were on you was out of the church.
Right.
There was different things. And so spirituality, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying spirituality was different.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
today we can see in society and we can see also in the church that we are claiming to have universal, of course, parameter the same for the world, especially in the church, but also being recognized as um, as being Polynesian
Yes.
with our own understanding, own aspect of life, own history.
Yes. I'm glad that we're in a different place now of understanding and embracing
Yes.
all of that together. In your growing, evolving sense of spirituality, what spiritual practice do you use to best connect with God, with the divine, and why does that work for you?
So the spiritual practice to connect me the best is when I am on the water or in the water. That's me.
Mm. Mm.
But but I don't really take the opportunity to do that one. So the second one who connects me the best is when I sit on the ground, on the ground, on the grass, or on on the dirt, but on the ground, connection with Mother Earth,
Mm-hmm.
and I like to read text several times, and most of the texts come from the Bible or other books, come from hymns. And I choose the text and the book according to my mood. I like to close eyes to focus on the silence or the sounds of life, and uh, and let the spirit or the text act in me. And when I did that, there were times when I ended with a completely new understanding of the text of life. But I like to be connected with the water or with the earth, the Mother Earth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if you were going to guide someone in a spiritual practice, what might you suggest for someone, either as a description of that step by step for them, or even leading us through that now with you as we listen?
So let, let me try something. Sit properly and breathe calmly. And put your hands on your legs or on your knees. Your hands palm up to the sky, open to the sky. And take just a few seconds to think about what your hands have done for you in recent days. How your hands were blessings for others. And inside of yourself, pray, saying, Lord, let my hands be yours and be blessing for your creation. So after that, you can open your eyes. I did this. It's a short path. You can do the same with uh, your feet, your heart, your eyes, your ears, your head, to reflect calmly about what your head, your eyes did for you and how they can be a blessing. They can be blessings for others. Reflect on that and pray God to use you and your whole being for God's purpose. That's a little example of, of a spiritual practice. Easy and I think helpful for us.
I love it. I love it. So as you were walking us through that, I closed my eyes and followed with you. And even in a brief spiritual practice of opening and introspection, review of how my hands had been used in the past few days, and on through the practice, it was a blessing to have those few moments of reflection and introspection. That is perfect. I love it. One of the things I love about it is it's something that a person could do almost anywhere.
Everywhere, anywhere. Yes.
Mareva, some of our listeners are new to spiritual practices. Do you have any tips for folks who might be trying out practices for the first time, or even maybe this practice that you introduced today was the first time they've tried something like that? Any tips for people new to practices?
I think I think it has to be simple and not too much thing to reflect on sometimes, especially for the beginning. Too much questions can destroy the concentration. That's what I think. It's possible to have spiritual practice like in silence when you pray in silence in yourself, but also if it's useful to just speak out loud.
Mm-hmm.
If you're alone, that's I think for the beginning it's really good. Being true to yourself and just right. Because sometimes don't control. That's the thing I wanted to say. When we think too much, we are controlling our thoughts and our feelings. But just being true to yourself and it's strange because when you're true to yourself, sometimes you discover things you never thought about, and you cry and you laugh.
Mm-hmm.
No reason, no reason. And let the spirit touch and guide.
These are great tips. Great tips. Let the spirit guide. Be true to yourself. Also, for people who might be new to spiritual practices, can you tell us a little bit about how having a practice or doing a daily practice for you can impact your day?
Mm-hmm. So my day, like many of us, is full, often full of many things, activities, things to think about, experiences of all kind. And spiritual practices allow me to intentionally listen myself and to take a time to make a connection with the spirit. I know the spirit is everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. But that's my time to connect with the spirit through the search for the divine in myself, or each time. And I'm opening myself more to like the light,
Uh-huh.
and I'm more calm. I'm more serene. Serene. That's the way we say.
More calm. And what was the other one? More calm and more
Like serenity.
Oh, serenity. More serenity.
Yes. More strong too.
Uh-huh.
And for myself, I did that at the beginning of the day. That's my discipline. It's a discipline.
Uh-huh.
And I believe that this has an impact on my relationship with the people I meet. That has an impact on the spirit that I share with those I meet on my path during the day.
Uh-huh.
And the spiritual practice has an impact on the thoughts and the decisions that I make. It's really helpful for me, for my development, and for the harmony of my mind and body.
Oh, I love that. It's helpful for the development and harmony of your body. Oh, that's great. That is great. You've talked a little bit about doing a group experience when, as a youth, you woke up really early in the morning on the island in pajamas and blankets. Everybody walked to the end of the island to be present and experience the rising of the sun. And you've also shared about individual experiences. How are those different for you, and how do you find them meaningful in different ways? Are there different aspects of those that connect? Is it easier for you one way or the other?
Spiritual practice comes and you take it as it comes. I think a spiritual practice alone or in a group is as powerful as the other. It depends where you are in your journey and your need, but both are powerful. For example, doing it alone allows freedom in organization, and you can be more focused on what you are and what you are called to do. As a group, the organization must be more communicative. And the effect of being in a group, I think, sometimes motivates. It's like a small candle, which when gathered together increase the luminosity. So that's the image I have for a spiritual practice in a group. But there are times loneliness is what we need.
I love the image of a single candle in a group. We each bring one small candle, and when it's gathered together, wherever you are, it increases the illumination of those gathered candles. But also sometimes the need is to be alone to find that illumination. Are there any spiritual... I'm sorry, can you say that again?
There is a quote. I just said there is a quote who said, "Loneliness calls for the multitude."
Loneliness calls for the multitude.
Oui.
That's deep. That's a deeply profound quote. Are there any spiritual practice that you've personally find challenging or difficult to do? Understanding, and I think you kind of alluded to this earlier, is be true to yourself and who you are. That not all spiritual practices are going to be a good fit. Are there some that you have found difficult or that you have found not to be a good fit?
I think from my personal experience, all spiritual practices were great.
Mm-hmm.
The time where it was not working for me, when I was not convinced, it was when I was doubting about many things, and when I am asked to do a spiritual practice and I'm not ready to do it,
Ah,
or I am when I need to agree,
yeah.
and sometimes to be convinced that this was a good time. This is a good time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I don't know if it's if you understand
Yes,
my.
I do indeed. I think there can be times when we're asked to participate in a spiritual practice, or someone in a class is encouraging us on our own time, you really need to engage in spiritual practice. There can be times when there's a resistance inside of us, that we're not in a place where we can be open to that, or there are other reasons, even just needing to come to it at your own time, that we're not available in a way, and that it's those times when it does feel like it's challenging, or it becomes in a sense more of a disconnect than a reconnect, because we're just not in a place where we're open to that. Mareva, you are the apostle for many different nations, and they have many different cultures and contexts. How do you see diverse people in your field integrating spiritual practices into their daily lives, as well as their life together as a congregation?
So I see a big difference in numbers and in congregation. I think the call from CVV in the past, encouraging the church to use spiritual practices, had made a big impact on us
Mm-hmm.
and in congregation. They are more intentional to include a spiritual practice, even though in different cultures, there, there, there are islands or countries, it's easy for them, like closing the eyes, like all this reflection. For others, it was really hard.
Ah,
Because closing the eyes for a few cultures is just not what we used to do, then only in prayer. And prayer is a spiritual practice. But when you begin to ask, close your eyes and reflect on, and you ask a question, it's so hard for many.
mm-hmm.
But I can see today in all these cultures in the field a huge improvement. And in society, we see also our young adults are really connected with spirituality, in yoga, in meditation, of course, so, in different
Uh-huh.
activities. And so when they come to church, they come also with their experiences, and that's great. And adapt in a more like reflection about God, a reflection about the spirit, a reflection about your ministry, about your being, your well-being. So I see a big difference. We still need to continue to work on that path.
That is so interesting to hear. And one of the things that interests me that you said is that you're seeing across your field the increased attention of young people to spirituality and awareness of that, and even a hunger for that. It sounds to me like that is something that's trending across humanity now, because we see that in many nations all over the globe. It's also interesting to hear you report the observation that President Beezy's call to the church for a spiritual awakening has had an impact. I see that as well in my field. Mareva, is there anything that you would like to share with us today that I did not ask you about?
Spiritual practice, it's a path. It's a path we usually walk in small steps, but where each step is a priceless gift. I realize the value of this gift. And as you nourish your body every day, we are called to nourish also our soul with a spiritual nourishment. And there are no secret. I think there is no secret to this. It's very, very important to devote time to study, to prayers, but also to be really intentional, to discipline ourselves, to go deep in meditation and in spiritual practices, to seek in the depth of us the answer of our being and of our call. It's important today, especially when we have a lot of things happening in our lives, challenges in the world, and to be more efficient for yourself and for helping, supporting others. We need to be nourished, to be strong in our mind and soul.
That is such a good reminder to us. And also your reminder that it's especially important when we are busy, when we are challenged, when we have so much going on, which can seem like the most difficult time to be intentional, and yet, and even counterintuitive, and yet it's even more important in those times in many regards. Mareva, are there any resources that you might recommend to our listeners to help them go deeper or discover practices?
So I'm reading few books in French. I'm watching a lot of movies or videos about meditation and spiritual practices today. And I'm reading a lot. I don't have specific. I go on the internet. I have few books, and I still remember these books. And there is a book written also by Caroline Brock. I can't remember the title, but it was my first book about spiritual practice, and I still have it for me So I can have, you can find different ways to do it, and it's not always the same. It's
Yeah.
not a routine.
Yes, there are a lot of things available to us now. Carolyn Brock, who is a longtime minister with Community of Christ, and I believe was our first spiritual formation specialist employed by the church, did a lot of writing. So if you're interested, you can Google Carolyn Brock. Even go to seaofchrist.org and put in the search box Carolyn Brock, and you might be able to, I'm sure it'll pull up several different things.
And I'm sure
Go ahead.
And I'm sure, I am sure that there are many conferences about well-being, spiritual well-being. So if we have the opportunity, we just need sometimes to take care. Sometimes it's extremist, but there are good conferences about spirituality too.
Yes, look in your area for spiritual conferences or gatherings. Also, if you look at seaofchrist.org, Katie Harmon McLaughlin is doing several different online spiritual formation gatherings, so you can check that out as well. And we have a spiritual formation page on seaofchrist.org with all the latest information. Mareva, thank you so much for being with us today. We are doing this online. I just left French Polynesia late Saturday evening, day before last, and we just did not have opportunity to cram this into our time together and decided to do it online. So Mareva is very early in the day, and I'm a little bit later in my current time zone. So thank you, Mareva, for making time to share with us. A very special thanks to all of our listeners here on Project Zion Podcast. If you would like to hear more from people who actively practice spirituality in their lives, look for our series, Holy Grounds, in the categories list on our website, projectzionpodcast.org. This is your host, Robin Linkhart, and you are listening to Project Zion Podcast. Go out and make the world a better place. Until next time, goodbye.